My name is Mara Bellamy Wexler. I'm 34 years old, and on a Saturday night in October, my mother-in-law moved my chair from the family table to a narrow space beside the Coatroom at her $80,000 charity gala. There were 300 guests in the ballroom, 200 coats hanging 6 feet from my shoulder, and one small brass tag in my palm with the number 217 stamped into it. Celeste Wexler smiled at me like she was correcting a table setting, not humiliating a person, and said, "Wives sit where they're placed until they've earned the family name." My husband, Daniel, heard her. His sister heard her. Half the first row heard her, too. I didn't cry, even though my face felt hot enough to give me away. I didn't leave. Even though every part of me wanted to walk through the marble lobby and not look back. I stayed because one folder had already been placed behind the event desk, and one man in a black suit knew why it mattered. By the end of that night, Celeste would be begging me not to embarrass the family in front of the very donors she had invited to watch me disappear. Welcome back to By Then I Knew, where the quiet part of the story finally gets told. If you have ever been asked to be useful, grateful, and invisible all at the same time, this one is for you. Some families don't push you out with a locked door. They save you a bad chair and call it manners. So settle in, tell me where you're listening from, and if this story touches a place you've had to protect alone, stay with me until the end. I did not marry Daniel for money. People assumed that because the Wexlers had a certain kind of name in our city. Not famous, exactly. Just familiar in the way old donor names are familiar. Their name was on a gallery wing at the Children's Museum, a scholarship luncheon at the private school, a plaque near the Rose Garden entrance at St. Agatha's Hospital. Celeste loved plaques. She knew where everyone was installed and which photographer had been there when the ribbon was cut. Daniel did not seem like that when we met. He was quiet, kind in the beginning, a little embarrassed by his family's performance of importance. We met at a building inspection after a pipe burst in a historic reading room downtown. He was there because his firm handled insurance review. I was there because I had been hired to help with operations after the restoration grant came through. He stood in the hallway holding a coffee that had gone cold and said, "You look like the only person here who knows what's actually happening." I liked that he noticed. Back then, I did know what was happening. I knew which wall had trapped moisture behind it. I knew which contractor had padded an invoice. I knew which emergency exit stuck when the humidity rose. I knew the difference between a building that looked saved and a building that was actually safe. That was my work. It still is. I manage commercial properties, mostly civic spaces and event buildings that need more attention than glamour. I read lease agreements, vendor contracts, insurance riders, repair estimates, occupancy rules, health department notes, staff reports, broker packets, and the kind of addendums people sign without reading because the font is small and the room is expensive. To Celeste, that was not work. The first time Daniel brought me to brunch at his parents' house, Celeste asked what I did, and I told her. She tilted her head and said, "So you do paperwork for buildings?" Daniel laughed lightly, like he was trying to soften it. I said, "Sometimes. Paperwork is usually where buildings tell the truth." Celeste blinked, then turned to refill her mimosa. That should have told me something. I grew up in a family where being easy was treated like a talent. My mother worked double shifts at a pharmacy until her knees started swelling. My father drifted in and out of construction jobs depending on the season and his mood. I was the oldest girl, which meant I knew where the light bill was kept, how to stretch a rotisserie chicken over 3 meals, how to sign a permission slip when nobody was home, and how to make myself small when adults were tired. People praised me for it. "Mara never complains. Mara can handle it. Mara understands." I heard those sentences so often they became instructions. By the time I met Daniel, I had built a decent life out of being capable. I owned a small condo with a cracked balcony tile I kept meaning to replace. I had a reliable car with a heater that clicked for 3 minutes before it worked. I had clients who called me when something flooded, failed, expired, or got signed wrong. I liked problems that had paper trails. People were harder. Celeste was harder. She did not reject me all at once. That would have been easier to see. She included me in ways that had hooks in them. She invited me to family dinners, then asked me to arrive early to help, because you're so organized. She put me in photos, but always near the edge. She introduced me as Daniel's wife, Mara, with a pause before wife like the word was still under review. At Christmas, she gave Blair a sapphire bracelet and gave me a planner with my initials embossed in gold. It seemed practical, she said. It was a nice planner. That was the thing. Celeste insults often came wrapped well enough that complaining made you look ungrateful. Daniel always had an explanation. She's old-fashioned. She takes time to warm up. She's intense about family. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. After a while, I stopped asking what she meant. I started watching what she did. Blair Wexler, Daniel's younger sister, was the person Celeste wished everyone else could be. Pretty in a sharp way, always camera-ready, always laughing at the exact volume her mother preferred. Blair ran social media for the Wexler Family Foundation, though she called herself Director of Community Presence. She posted black and white photos of children holding art supplies, then complained in the car if the lighting had been bad. Blair never forgot that I had come from a different kind of life. Once, during Thanksgiving, I brought roasted carrots because Daniel said his mother wanted me to contribute something. Blair looked at the dish and said, "That's sweet." "Very farmhouse," I said. "They're just carrots." She smiled. "Exactly." Daniel heard that too. He squeezed my knee under the table. That was his habit. A squeeze instead of a sentence. A private apology in place of public loyalty. For a long time, I accepted it. I told myself he was different when we were alone. He knew how Celeste could be. He apologized after the fact. He said he hated conflict. He said his mother could ruin a whole month with one phone call. And he had spent his childhood learning how not to set her off. I understood fear. I really did. But understanding someone's fear does not make it safe to stand in the place where they keep dropping you. The year of the gala, Celeste became chair of the Wexler Family Foundation's annual donor night. It was their biggest event, the one where old money, new money, and people hoping to be mistaken for either showed up in dark suits and jewel-toned dresses. The foundation raised money for arts education, at least on paper. Celeste cared about the children in the broad, distant way some people care about causes that photograph well. That October gala was supposed to be her comeback. There had been whispers about the foundation. Nothing dramatic enough for the newspaper, but enough for donors to ask questions. Administrative costs too high, vendor payments delayed. Blair's community presence budget looking suspiciously like personal styling and travel. Celeste called it gossip. 3 weeks before the gala, I was at my desk with a cold cup of coffee, reviewing a vendor coordination packet for the Halden Room. The Halden Room was one of my favorite buildings. It had been a fraternal hall in the 20s, then a bank annex, then nearly nothing for a decade. The ballroom had walnut paneling that had survived 3 bad remodels and 1 small fire. The lobby floor was marble, but not the glossy kind. The old kind, gray-white, with a fine web of veins and a chipped corner near the east doors. I knew that chip because I had once stood over it at 7 in the morning with a facilities manager, a mason, and a city inspector who said the word liability 6 times before breakfast. My company, Larkspur Civic Holdings, had taken ownership of the building 18 months earlier through a quiet sale nobody in Daniel's family had paid attention to. I did not hide it. Exactly. I just did not announce it at dinner between Celeste's wine pairings and Blair's complaints about linen colors. Larkspur was the company Celeste had once called my little shell thing. She said it in front of Daniel at brunch. "What is it called again?" "Larks something," she asked. "Larkspur Civic Holdings," I said. "How charming," she said. "Like fake work, but with stationery." Daniel gave me that knee squeeze. I remember looking down at his hand and feeling nothing for a second. Not anger, not sadness. Just a still place opening inside me. When the Halden Room packet arrived, I almost missed the client name. I had 3 other files open and a plumber texting me about a pressure valve. Then I saw it on the 2nd page. Wexler Family Foundation Annual Donor Gala, booked through Morrow and Vale Events. Client representative, Celeste Wexler. I sat back in my chair. The broker had handled the booking, which was why Celeste had not seen my name. The ownership disclosure was in the addendum, as it always was, but most clients skimmed that section. They saw Larkspur Civic Holdings and thought it was just another entity in the stack. I read the packet twice. Then I called Reed Ansell. Reed was the event director at the Halden Room. He was not warm in the usual customer service way. He was better than warm. He was precise, steady, and almost impossible to rattle. He had worked hotels, museums, and one political convention that he described only as character building. He wore black suits, kept 2 pens in his inside jacket pocket, and knew every fire exit in the building by muscle memory. "Mara," he said when he picked up, "tell me you're calling about the Wexler event." I looked at the packet again. That bad already, a pause. "Not bad," he said, "specific." That was Reed's word when he meant difficult but documentable. He told me Celeste's team had been calling daily. They wanted staff to use different titles for certain family members. They wanted the foundation logo projected larger. They wanted a late change to the seating chart, though they had not submitted the names yet. Blair had asked if coat check could be moved because guests shouldn't see clutter, and Reed had explained that coats, by nature, were the reason coat check existed. I rubbed my forehead. "Do they know?" "He know," I said. "Do you want them to know?" I looked at the framed inspection photo on my shelf, the one from the day we reopened the ballroom after the floor refinishing. I was in the corner of the photo, wearing jeans and a navy blazer, holding a clipboard. Most people would not even notice me. "Not yet," I said. Reed did not ask why. He only said, "I'll keep the full file on site." That sentence stayed with me. That evening, Daniel came home late. He dropped his keys into the blue ceramic bowl by the door and kissed my cheek while reading something on his phone. "Your mother's gala is at the Halden Room," I said. He looked up, but not quickly enough. "You knew?" I asked. "She mentioned the venue," he said. "Did she mention she booked it?" "I guess." "Yeah. Did you tell her about Larkspur?" He set his phone face down. There it was. The little movement people make when the truth is nearby, and they do not want the screen lighting up. "Mara," he said, "Mom has been under a lot of pressure. That isn't an answer. She gets weird about money. That also isn't an answer." He sighed, already tired of a conversation I had barely begun. I didn't think it mattered. I waited. He opened the refrigerator and stared inside. "Look, if she knew you had anything to do with the building, she would either make it strange or cancel, and then everyone would ask questions. It's one night. One night where your mother is renting a building I own through a company she mocks." He flinched at the word own, not because he did not know, because I had said it plainly. "She doesn't understand what you do," he said. "No, she doesn't ask." He closed the refrigerator without taking anything out. "Can we please not turn the gala into a thing?" he asked. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because he said it like the gala was a weather system, and I was standing outside with a grudge against rain. "I'm not the one turning it into anything," I said. Daniel came around the island and put both hands flat on the counter. "Mom just wants tonight to look right." I looked at him for a long time. "What does that mean?" He did not answer right away. That was when I knew Celeste had already said something about me. A few days later, I found out what it was. We were at Daniel's parents' house for Sunday dinner. Celeste's dining room always smelled faintly of lilies and furniture polish. There were silver candlesticks on the table that nobody ever lit. Grant Wexler, Daniel's father, sat at the head of the table, like a man waiting for someone else to decide the weather. He had been a surgeon before retirement, and now spent most conversations clearing his free throat and saying, "Your mother has a point." Uncle Warren was there too. Warren was Grant's older brother, a widower who wore cardigans with leather buttons and looked at me with an apology. He never quite spoke. Blair arrived late, kissed Celeste on both cheeks, and dropped into the chair across from me. "We finalized most of the gala layout," Blair said. "It's going to be stunning. I'm sure it will be," I said. Celeste smiled over her wine glass. "Mara, you'll wear something simple, I hope." Daniel looked down at his plate. I said I was planning to. "Good," Celeste said. "The family table will be heavily photographed." There was a little silence, then Blair said, "Well, the main family table." Celeste gave her a look, not a warning. "Permission." I put my fork down. Daniel said, "Mom." Celeste dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin. "What?" "Seating is complicated. Donors have expectations. Board members have expectations. It isn't personal." "It usually is when people say that," I said. Grant cleared his throat. Celeste's smile thinned. Mara, not every decision is an indictment. Some events require hierarchy. Uncle Warren shifted in his chair. I looked at Daniel. He was staring at his water glass. I asked, "Am I seated with you?" Celeste did not blink. "You'll be seated where it makes sense." There it was, a small sentence, softly delivered, easy to deny later. On the drive home, Daniel gripped the steering wheel with both hands and said nothing for 8 blocks. Finally, I asked, "Did you know she was moving me?" "She didn't say it like that. How did she say it?" He turned onto our street too fast. "Mara, please." That's not an answer. He pulled into the driveway and sat there with the engine still running. "She asked if you really needed to be at table 1, he said. I looked out the windshield at the dark front window of our house. "And what did you say?" I said I didn't want drama. That one landed quietly. Not because it was the cruelest thing he could have said. Because it was honest. To Daniel, drama was not his mother excluding me. Drama was me objecting to it. I went inside, hung my coat in the hall closet, and checked my phone. There was a message from Reed. "File will be on site if needed." I stared at it for a few seconds. Then I typed back, "Thank you. Please make sure all seating revisions are kept with timestamps." He replied with one word, "Already." The week before the gala, Celeste called me 4 times, not to discuss seating. She needed vendor contacts, because Blair had misplaced an email thread. She needed someone to confirm whether the north entrance could handle valet overflow. She needed me to explain why the fire marshal would care about decorative screens near an exit. She needed me to tell her whether a late-night dessert station required a separate service table. Each time, she began with, "Since you know about these little building things." Each time, I answered clearly. I did not do it for her. I did it because staff should not suffer when rich people confuse rules with suggestions. Sloane Park called me 2 nights before the gala. She was catering the event, which made me feel better. Sloane had a voice like warm gravel, and the practical kindness of someone who had fed people through weddings, funerals, fundraisers, and one city council holiday party where the mayor's wife cried into a tray of stuffed mushrooms. "You coming Saturday?" she asked. "Yes. As guest or ghost?" I smiled despite myself. "What does that mean, with the Wexlers?" "Those are usually the options." I leaned back in my chair. Sloane had worked with Celeste before. Most vendors in town had, at least once. "I'm coming as Daniel's wife," I said. That wasn't one of the options. I didn't answer right away. Then she said softer, "You okay? I'm watching." I said, "Good," she said. "Watch with food in your stomach. People make worse decisions hungry." On Friday afternoon, I asked Daniel one more time. We were in the kitchen. He was standing by the sink, rinsing a coffee mug he had not used. The house was quiet in that end-of-week way. Laundry half-folded on the sofa, mail stacked by the door, my black dress hanging from the frame of the laundry room. "Where am I seated tomorrow?" I asked. He kept rinsing the mug. "Daniel, I don't have the final chart. You could ask." He shut off the water. "Mara, I'm asking you to let me get through tomorrow." I felt something in me step back, not away from the conversation, away from him. "You're asking me to get through it for you," I said. He turned around. "That's not fair." "Maybe not." His phone lit up on the counter. Celeste's name appeared. He looked at it, then at me. I asked, "Are you going to answer?" He did. He walked into the living room, but not far enough. I heard his mother's voice through the speaker in pieces. "Photographer near table 1. Blair says the arrangement looks cleaner. Mara can be sensitive." "I know." Then, after a pause, "I'll handle it." He did not handle it. The next evening, I dressed slowly. My dress was deep green, simple, long-sleeved, with a neckline Celeste could not call inappropriate unless she was willing to sound ridiculous. I wore small pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, and black heels I could stand in for hours. I brought a cream wrap because October nights in our city had a way of turning cold after sunset. Daniel wore a tuxedo and looked handsome in the distracted way of men who know they are walking into a problem they helped build. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." He reached for my hand in the car. I let him hold it for 3 minutes. Then I moved it to adjust my wrap and did not put it back. The Halden room glowed when we arrived. Warm light spilled through the tall front windows. Valets moved through headlights and exhaust. Women lifted hems over the curb. Men laughed too loudly near the entrance, already performing generosity before they had written check. Inside, the marble lobby smelled like raincoats, perfume, candle wax, and lemon oil from the polished wood. I knew every inch of that lobby. I knew the closet door that stuck if you pulled instead of lifted. I knew the brass rail had been reinstalled 3 inches higher than the original because modern code required it. I knew the ceiling medallion above the chandelier had a hairline crack that had been repaired so well even Celeste would never notice it. At coat check, a young woman with dark braids and a black vest smiled at us. "Good evening," she said. "Name, Wexler," Daniel said. Her eyes flicked to me, just once. That was the first thing I noticed. Not fear, not recognition, something closer to discomfort. "Daniel Wexler," he clarified. She found his ticket, handed him a brass tag, then looked down at the second tray. "And Mrs. Wexler," I said gently. Her fingers hesitated. "I'm sorry," she said one moment. Daniel shifted beside me. "There should be 2. I'm sure," she said quickly. She looked toward the ballroom entrance, where Blair stood laughing with 2 women in silver dresses. Blair saw us, lifted one hand, and turned away. The coat check attendant found a tag and handed it to me. 217. Her hand was cold when our fingers touched. "I'm Tessa," she said quietly. "If you need anything." That was not a normal coat check sentence. I placed my wrap over the counter. "Thank you, Tessa." Daniel was already looking toward his family. "Come on," he said. "They're probably waiting." They were not waiting. Table 1 sat directly in front of the stage. It had white roses in low glass bowls, gold-rimmed chargers, and name cards in Celeste's favorite ink. Dark blue with a slight shimmer, Celeste and Grant, Daniel Wexler, Warren Wexler. 3 major donors, a city arts commissioner, no Mara. I stood behind Daniel's chair and looked at the table. There are moments when embarrassment has sound. Not loud sound, tiny sound. A fork touching china, someone's breath catching, a woman in diamonds saying, "Oh," then pretending she had not. Daniel picked up his name card, then put it down. "I'll ask," he said. Celeste appeared before he could move. She was wearing burgundy silk and a diamond necklace that looked like a threat. Her silver hair was swept into a smooth knot. Her smile widened when she saw me, and I knew she had been waiting for this. "Mara," she said, "you made it." I looked at the empty space where my chair should have been. "My name card seems to be missing." "No, darling," she said. "Nothing is missing." Daniel said, "Mom, where is Mara seated?" Celeste touched his sleeve, that touch, light, familiar, commanding. "Daniel, not tonight," she said. He looked at her hand. Then he looked at me. For half a second, I thought he might do it. I thought he might pull out his chair, place his hand on the back of it, and say, "My wife sits with me." It would not have fixed everything, but it would have mattered. It would have been a line drawn in a room where everybody understood lines. Instead, he said, "Can we talk about this after the welcome?" Something settled in me. I did not slam a door inside myself. I just stopped holding it open. Celeste turned to me with the relief of someone whose son had chosen correctly. "We made a small adjustment," she said. "The family table is tight. There are 9 chairs," I said. "There were supposed to be 10. Blair came up behind her mother. "Some people changed last minute," she said. "You know how these things are." "I do," I said. Blair missed the meaning. Celeste gestured toward the east corridor. "We placed you near coat check. It's quieter there. You've always preferred being out of the fuss." I looked toward the corridor. There was a narrow service-adjacent table set with 1 water glass, 1 bread plate, and no centerpiece. Behind it, the coatroom doors stood open, revealing racks packed with dark wool, faux fur, camel hair, satin wraps, and 1 bright red raincoat like a warning. I looked back at Daniel. He did not meet my eyes. Celeste leaned close enough that only the people nearest us could hear. "Wives sit where they're placed until they've earned the family name." The words were not shouted. That made them worse. A man at table 1 looked down at his program. 1 woman gave a small, nervous laugh. Blair smiled into her champagne. Uncle Warren, seated at the far side, looked at me with such visible shame that for 1 second I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I picked up my small clutch. "Excuse me," I said. Daniel whispered, "Mara." I paused. He did not add anything, so I walked to the coatroom table. Tessa saw me coming and her face changed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered when I sat. "You didn't seat me here," I said. She swallowed. They told us the chart was final. Who told you? She glanced toward the ballroom. Mrs. Wexler's daughter brought the revision, Mrs. Wexler initialed it. I placed my brass tag beside my water glass. 27. I understand, I said. Tessa looked like she wanted to say more, but a guest approached with a coat over one arm and irritation already forming. I sat alone while the ballroom filled. From that angle, I could see things Celeste had not meant for me to see. Staff slipping through the side door with trays. Blair checking her reflection in the black glass of a framed donor list. Daniel sitting stiffly at table 1, his shoulders high. Celeste moving from guest to guest, touching elbows, accepting compliments, laughing like the night belonged to her. A server came by with salads and paused when he saw my table. "Mom," he said, "I don't think I have you on the dinner count. That's all right." "It isn't," said a voice behind him. Sloane Park stepped around the server, wearing a black chef coat and no patience on her face. She looked at my table, then at the coats, then back at me. "Oh, honey," she said under her breath. "I'm fine." "No," she said. "You're composed. That's different." She disappeared and came back 6 minutes later with a small plate, chicken, asparagus, a roll wrapped in a napkin, and a glass of water with ice. "Eat something before you have to be strong," she said. I looked up at her. No one in my husband's family had asked whether I had eaten. "Thank you," I said. She touched the back of the empty chair across from me. "I'm around." That was all. No speech, no outrage, no performance, just food. I ate 3 bites because she was right. The program began at 7:30. Celeste stepped onto the stage under soft amber lights, and the room quieted with the obedience wealthy rooms give people who control invitations. She welcomed everyone to the Wexler Family Foundation's annual donor gala. She talked about children, imagination, community, and the sacred obligation to open doors. She used all the right words. She thanked our sponsors, board members, city partners, artists, educators, and the family whose loyalty makes this work possible. At that, she looked directly toward table 1. Daniel looked down. Then Celeste's gaze moved to me. I felt it before I saw it. A room can turn its attention like a body. "And of course," Celeste said, her voice brightening, "family is not just a word, it is a standard. Some people are born into it, some marry near it, and some are still learning where they fit." A few people laughed, not many, enough. Celeste smiled wider. I did not move. She lifted one hand, palm open in my direction. "Mara is with us tonight, seated somewhere a little more comfortable for someone still finding her place." There it was. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, not a seating issue, a public placement. The silence after the laughter was thin and strange. People sensed something had happened, but not everyone knew whether they were supposed to disapprove. In rooms like that, morality often waits to see who has the most power. Celeste continued speaking. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from Daniel. "Please don't react." I looked at those 3 words for a long time. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I'll fix this." "Please don't react." I locked the screen and set the phone face down beside the brass tag. Tessa stood frozen behind the coat check counter. Her eyes were wet. She was young enough to still be surprised when adults were cruel in formal clothes. I gave her a small nod so she would know I was all right. I was not all right, but I was steady. Celeste moved on to the auction preview. A weekend house, a private dinner, a signed print, a naming opportunity for an arts classroom. Her voice regained its rhythm. Then Blair walked to the stage with a tablet and began showing a short video about the foundation's work. Children painting, teachers smiling, donors nodding in carefully lit interviews. Celeste dabbed at one eye for the camera, even though she had seen the video 6 times. While the video played, Reed appeared near the east corridor. He did not come straight to me. Reed was too good at his job for that. He checked with a staff captain, adjusted something near the AV table, spoke briefly into his earpiece, and only then passed near my table. His eyes flicked to the brass tag, then to my plate, then to me. "Mrs. Wexler," he said evenly, "do you need anything?" Celeste's table was close enough to hear him if they were listening. I said, "Not yet." He gave one small nod. Not yet meant something between us. I saw Daniel notice. For the first time that night, he looked afraid for a reason that had nothing to do with his mother's mood. After the video, dinner service began. Table 1 received wine first, then the major donor tables, then the rest of the ballroom. I was not on the service map, but Sloane had already solved that. Halfway through the main course, Blair came over. She brought her champagne with her. "Mara," she said, looking down at me. "You okay over here?" She glanced at my plate. "Sloane is so sweet, she is." Blair leaned closer. "Mom didn't mean anything by the comment. You know how she is with a microphone." "I do now." Her smile tightened. "Just don't make Daniel's night hard." I looked past her to table 1. Daniel was watching us. "Is that what you came over to say?" "I came over because people are asking." "What there's asking?" Blair's eyes moved toward the coats. "Why you're sitting here. What did you tell them? That you preferred it?" I let that sit between us. Then I said, "Did I?" She took a sip of champagne. "You always want everything to be so literal." That was Blair's mistake. People who think details are small often leave fingerprints on them. "Tessa said there was a revision," I said. Blair's face changed quickly, then smoothed staff gossip. "You know, I do know staff," I said. She gave a small laugh. "Right, you're building people." She said, building like it was a hobby involving dust. I looked at her for 1 extra second, long enough for her to feel it. Then I picked up my water glass. Blair walked away. 10 minutes later, Tessa came to my table with a folded slip of paper hidden beneath a stack of extra claim tickets. "I don't know if this matters," she whispered. But I didn't like how they said it. She set the paper beside my bread plate and moved away before anyone noticed. I did not unfold it immediately. I waited until a server passed between me and table 1. Then I opened it under the edge of the tablecloth. It was a seating revision form. Printed at 5:42 p.m. Guest, Mara Bellamy Wexler, original table 1, revised location, East Coatroom Auxiliary. Reason, family discretion. Requested by Blair Wexler. Approved by... Celeste's initials were sharp and dark at the bottom. I folded it again. That small paper was not the whole truth. Not even close. But it was the first piece Celeste could not turn into tone. At 8:15, Celeste began the donor appeal. This was the part that mattered most to her. The lights dimmed. Dessert plates were cleared. Donation cards appeared beside coffee cups. The large screen behind the stage showed the foundation logo in gold. Celeste returned to the microphone. She was glowing now, not with warmth. With control, she spoke about legacy. She spoke about responsibility. She spoke about how families with privilege had a duty to model generosity. Then, one of the donors at table 3, a woman named Marian Vale, raised her hand. Marian was in her 70s, with white hair cut at her jaw and emerald earrings that did not move when she did. I knew of her because she funded historic preservation projects and asked better questions than most boards enjoyed. "Celeste," Marian said, "before pledges, could you clarify whether the foundation has resolved last year's vendor reporting issue?" The room shifted. Celeste's smile held, but her eyes sharpened. "Of course," she said. "That matter was administrative and fully handled." Marian did not sit back. "Will donors receive updated expense categories this year?" Blair froze near the AV table. Grant looked into his coffee as if it might have an answer. Celeste gave a light laugh. "Marian, I promise, tonight is about the children, not spreadsheets." A few people chuckled. Marian did not. I noticed Reed standing near the side wall, listening. Celeste went on, but the rhythm had changed. Her control had a hairline crack. That was when she looked toward me again. I do not know whether she did it because she needed a distraction, or because cruelty was where she went, when she felt cornered. Maybe both. As I was saying, Celeste continued, families teach us service. They teach us humility. They teach us that everyone has a role. Her gaze landed on me. And when everyone accepts their role with grace, good work can happen. Daniel put his napkin down. This was his second chance. He stood halfway. Celeste touched his wrist without looking at him. He sat back down. I watched the movement from across the room. A clean little collapse. People think the final break in a marriage is loud. Mine was a man sitting down. I stood, not quickly. I placed my napkin beside my plate. I put the folded seating slip into my clutch. I picked up the brass coat check tag, then set it back beside the water glass because I wanted both hands free. Several heads turned. Celeste stopped speaking. For a moment, the only sound was silverware settling and the soft hum of the projector. Daniel mouthed my name. I did not look at him. I looked at Reed. "Mr. Ansel," I said, not loudly, but clearly enough for the tables nearest me. May I have the microphone for a moment? Celeste laughed. It was the first honest sound she had made all night. Oh, absolutely not. I stayed standing. Mara, she said, still smiling for the room. This is neither the time nor the place. That's what I thought earlier, I said. Her smile thinned. She looked at Reed. Please escort her out before she embarrasses herself. Reed did not move. Celeste's voice sharpened. This is my event. Reed looked at me. That was the moment the room began to understand that something was off. Not what, just that the expected order had failed. Celeste said, Mr. Ansel, I am instructing you to remove her. Reed stepped towards the stage. Then he turned, took the handheld microphone from its stand, and walked toward me. Celeste's face went still. When Reed reached my table, he lowered his voice, but the microphone was already live. Yes, owner, he said. The words moved through the ballroom like a dropped tray. Not loud, impossible to miss. I took the microphone. For 1 second, I felt every eye in the room on my face, my dress, my empty little table, the coats behind me, the brass tag near my glass. My hand was steady, but my heartbeat was not. I looked at Celeste. Mrs. Wexler, I said, did you personally approve the seating change that moved me from table 1 to the coatroom corridor? Her mouth opened, then closed. She had 3 possible paths in front of her: deny it and risk the paper, admit it and look cruel, attack me and look worse. Celeste chose the one that felt most natural. I approved a seating adjustment, she said, because this is a formal donor event, and not everyone is entitled to sit at the family table. A few people looked down. Marion Vale did not. I asked, was the reason listed as family discretion? Celeste's eyes narrowed. Blair stepped forward. This is ridiculous, Reed said. Miss Wexler, please let her finish. Blair looked shocked that staff had spoken to her that way. I reached into my clutch and unfolded the seating slip. Tessa stood behind the coat check counter, pale but upright. This revision was printed at 5:42 p.m., I said. Requested by Blair Wexler. Approved by CW Original Table 1. Revised location East Coatroom Auxiliary. Celeste lifted her chin. And? That one word did more damage than anything I could have added. And, as if moving a person beside the coats in front of 300 guests was normal if the person deserved it. Reed walked to the event desk and returned with a dark blue folder. I knew that folder. I had approved the color because Reed said black folders disappeared under podium lighting. He placed it on the small table in front of me. Celeste stared at it. What is that? She asked. The venue file, Reed said. I signed the venue agreement, Celeste snapped. I know what I signed. Marion Vale said quietly. Do you? The room heard her. Celeste's cheeks colored. I opened the folder. I did not read the whole contract. That would have turned the moment into a lecture, and Celeste would have used boredom as cover. I turned to the operating authority page. My professional work, I said, the work your family has referred to for years as fake, cute, little, and not real enough to matter, includes managing civic properties through Larkspur Civic Holdings. Daniel closed his eyes. He knew now, not the facts. He had known those. He knew the timing. Celeste looked at Daniel. What is she talking about? Daniel did not answer, so Reed did. The Halden Room is owned by Larkspur Civic Holdings, he said. Mrs. Mara Bellamy Wexler is the managing member with final operating authority. The silence changed shape. At table 1, Grant finally looked up. Blair whispered, no. Celeste actually laughed again. But this time there was no room behind it. That's absurd. Reed opened the folder to the disclosure addendum. Your signed agreement acknowledged the ownership entity on page 4, he said. Your initials are on page 5. The conduct clause is page 7. Celeste reached for the folder. I moved it back slightly, just enough. Her eyes flashed. Mara, she said, and now her voice had the sharp privacy of a kitchen fight, even though the microphone carried every word. Don't be childish. I looked at Reed. Please read the relevant section. He did. His voice was calm, professional, and merciless because it was not emotional at all. Client and client representatives shall not interfere with venue staff operations, create discriminatory or degrading treatment of guests or staff, misrepresent access authority, or engage in conduct that causes reputational harm to the venue, its ownership, or contracted personnel. Venue ownership reserves the right to modify, suspend, or revoke client privileges, including future event rights in response to documented breach. He stopped. The ballroom held still. Celeste said, "This is a family matter." I looked around the room, at the donors, the staff, Tissa Sloan, Marion Vale, Uncle Warren with his hand over his mouth. Daniel with his shoulders collapsed. "No," I said. "You made it part of the program." That was one of the few general truths I let myself say that night. Celeste looked at the guests, and I watched her realize the room was no longer waiting for her permission to understand. She turned back to me. Her voice softened. "Mara, sweetheart, this has gotten out of hand." There it was, the pivot, not apology, strategy. "I think emotions are high," she said. "You misunderstood my intention." I looked at the little table where I had been seated. My chairs were removed. It was a seating issue. "You announced it. I was trying to be light. You told 300 people I had not earned the family name." Her jaw tightened. Daniel stood then, too late. "Mara," he said, "can we talk privately?" I looked at him. "For years," I said. "You asked me to handle it privately." His face crumpled in a way that would have moved me once. Celeste grabbed his arm. "Daniel, don't engage with this." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because even then she thought he was the one at risk. Marion Vale stood. She did not raise her voice. "Celeste," she said, "did you know your daughter-in-law controlled the venue when you moved her seat?" Celeste looked trapped by the simplicity of the question. "No," she said. Marion nodded once. "So you treated her that way when you believed she had no power here." No one laughed. No one rescued Celeste from the sentence. Blair said, "This is insane." Mom was trying to protect the family table. Sloan stepped out from near the service door. "From the owner?" she asked. A few people turned. Blair's face went red. "You're catering." Sloan said yes, nothing else. It landed because it was enough. Reed closed the folder. "Mrs. Wexler," he said to Celeste, "the current event will be completed safely. Bar service will continue through the contracted time. The auction may proceed if Mrs. Bellamy Wexler allows it. However, based on documented conduct and misrepresentation to staff, the Halden Room is revoking the Wexler Family Foundation's preferred booking status effective tonight. Future dates connected to the donor weekend are released." Celeste stared at him. "You can't do that." Reed looked at me. I did not speak. He said, "Venue ownership can." Grant pushed back his chair. "Celeste, perhaps we should." "Do not," she hissed. But it was too late for the room to return to her. 2 donors at table 4 stood and left quietly. Then another couple. Marion Vale remained standing, her donation card untouched in front of her. Celeste saw the cards. That was when panic finally reached her eyes. "Mara," she said, turning back to me with a smile that shook at the edges. "We are family. Whatever disagreement we've had, it should not affect the children this foundation serves." I looked at the foundation logo behind her. All night, she had used the word family like a velvet rope. Now she wanted it to be a bandage. "I'm not affecting the children," I said. "I'm refusing to hide what you did." Daniel came toward. His steps were slow, like he was approaching an injured animal. "Mara, please," he said. I waited. He looked at the folder, then at the Coatroom, then at me. I didn't know she would say it on stage. I believed him. That was the sad part. He had only known she would do something smaller, something easier to excuse, something I would be expected to swallow and discuss in the car. "You knew enough," I said. He flinched. Celeste made a small wounded sound. "After everything we've done to welcome you." I looked at her. The microphone was still in my hand. I could have listed it all: the brunches, the planner, the missing photos, the jokes, the volunteer work she accepted from me while calling me unimportant, the way she trained her family to confuse my silence with agreement. But the room did not need my whole marriage. It needed the truth of that night. I set the microphone on the table. Then I picked up the brass tag. 217. "I'm going to get my wrap," I said. Celeste stepped toward me. "You will not walk out of here like some victim." I stopped. That was the closest I came to anger showing. "I'm not a victim because I'm leaving," I said. "I was treated like one when I stayed." That was the second truth I let myself keep. I walked to coat check. Tessa was crying quietly now, trying not to. She took the brass tag from my hand with shaking fingers. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "You told the truth," I said. "That matters." She brought me my cream wrap. The fabric had picked up the faint smell of wool and rain from the crowded racks. As she handed it over, she slipped the brass tag back into my palm. "You can keep it," she said. We lose them all the time anyway. I closed my fingers around it. Behind me, the room had become a low storm of whispers. Celeste was speaking quickly to Marion Vale. Blair was on her phone. Daniel stood where I had left him, not following and not returning to table 1. Sloane met me near the lobby. "You need a ride?" she asked. I drove with Daniel. That wasn't my question. For the first time all night, I almost cried, not when Celeste insulted me, not when Daniel sat down, not when the room laughed at the offer of a ride. That is what kindness can do when you have been bracing for impact too long. "I have a car service app," I said. "I'll wait with you. You have a kitchen to run." "I have staff," she said. "And you have 5 minutes where nobody should be standing alone." So she waited with me in the marble lobby, under the chandelier I had once fought to preserve. The photographer passed us without taking a picture. Good. Some moments do not need proof, because the people who matter were there. Daniel came out just as my car pulled up. "Mara," he said. Sloane stepped back but did not leave. Daniel's bow tie was crooked. He looked younger than 36, and tired in a way I recognized from every hard conversation he had avoided until it became too large for him. "I'm sorry," he said. I nodded. "I know." "No," he said quickly. "I mean it. I think you mean it right now." That hurt him, I saw it. He looked through the lobby doors toward the ballroom. "My mother is spiraling. I'm sure. Can we just go home and talk?" I looked at the man I had married, the man who had once brought me coffee at a flooded building, and said, I seemed like the only person who knew what was happening. I wanted that version of him to be standing there. Maybe he was. Maybe he had always been both. But I could not build a life around the version of someone who only appeared after damage. "I'm not going home with you tonight," I said. His mouth opened. Then Celeste appeared behind him. She had followed fast enough that her public smile had not fully returned. "Mara," she said, breathless, "this is enough. You have made your point." I looked at her burgundy silk, her diamonds, the foundation pin at her shoulder, the controlled fury behind her eyes. "No," I said, "you made it." She lowered her voice. "You are still part of this family." There was the doorway, the old one, the one I had been trying to earn my way through for years. I looked at Daniel, then at Celeste. "Then you should have known where I belonged." I did not wait for her answer. I got into the car with the brass tag in my hand and Sloane standing under the awning until I pulled away. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room with bad coffee, swollen eyes, and 46 unread messages. Daniel had sent 12. Celeste had sent 1. "We should talk before this becomes something it can't come back from." I stared at that message for a while, not because I was tempted, because she still thought the danger was the story becoming public, not the fact that it was true. There were also 3 messages from Reed. The first said the event had concluded safely. The second said Marion Vale had requested vendor documentation from the foundation directly, not from us. The third said, simply, "Staff is okay." That was the one that made me exhale. Later that week, Reed and I met at the Halden room, not in the ballroom. In the small office behind the west stairs where the Wi-Fi was strongest and the radiator hissed even when it was not cold. He brought printed incident notes, Tessa's statement, Sloane's statement, the seating revision, timeline of Celeste's instructions, Blair's communications with staff. Daniel was not in the file except as a guest at table 1, which was exactly what he had chosen to be. I read every page. Reed waited. When I finished, he said, "Do you want to ban them permanently?" I looked through the office window into the service hallway. "No," I said. "Just the foundation for donor events. If an individual Wexler wants to rent a room for a birthday in 10 years and behaves like a normal person, we can review it." Reed's mouth twitched. "That is more generous than I expected." "It isn't generosity," I said. "It's policy." He nodded once, approving. I did not want to become Celeste in reverse. I did not want to wake up thinking about how to punish people. I wanted clean rules, clean records, and locks on doors that needed locks. Daniel came by the house 2 days after the gala. I had already packed a suitcase and moved into the apartment, above one of Larkspur's smaller properties. A brick building with a florist on the first floor and old pine floors upstairs. It was not fancy. The bathroom sink dripped if you turned the handle too far. The bedroom window faced an alley where delivery trucks arrived at 6 in the morning. But the key was mine. Daniel stood in our kitchen while I packed files from the drawer near the stove. I should have stood up, he said. Yes. I thought if I kept things calm. You kept your mother calm, I said. Not things. He rubbed both hands over his face. I hate that you're right. I almost said something comforting. The habit rose in me, automatic and old. I let it pass. He looked at me then, really looked. What happens now? I'm separating our finances, I said. I'm staying elsewhere. I need space. After that, we can talk through attorneys or a counselor about what comes next. His eyes filled. You're leaving me over one night? I closed the drawer. No, I said. I'm leaving because one night showed me the shape of all the others. That was the third truth. He sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where I had filled out his father's Medicare paperwork when Grant misplaced a form. The same table where I had organized Celeste's vendor contacts when Blair forgot to renew a deposit. The same table where I had wrapped birthday gifts for people who still introduced me like a guest. I love you, Daniel said. I know. And you love me. I looked at him for a long time. Yes, I said. But I don't trust you with me, he cried then. Quietly, I did not hold him. That may sound cold if you have never spent years comforting the person who watched you get hurt. Celeste tried twice to reach me in person. The first time, she came to the Halden room and asked for Reed. He told her all communication about foundation bookings had to go through counsel. She said she wanted to speak to my daughter-in-law. He said I was unavailable. I was upstairs reviewing a roof repair estimate. I heard her voice through the vent, still controlled, still offended, still certain there was a private hallway back to power if she could find the right door. The second time she came to the florist below my apartment. The owner, Mrs. Alvarez, called me from the shop phone. There is a very shiny woman down here asking for you, she said. I looked out the window and saw Celeste on the sidewalk, holding her purse with both hands. Tell her I'm not available. Mrs. Alvarez covered the receiver, then came back. She says it's family. I closed my eyes. Tell her that's not an appointment. A pause. Then Mrs. Alvarez laughed once. I like you, she said, and hung up. Celeste left a message that night. Her voice was soft, almost tender. Mara, I know things were said. I know feelings were hurt. But you have to understand the pressure I was under. People are trying to take away everything our family built. I reacted poorly, I can admit that. But you blindsided me. You let me walk into that venue without telling me. That was not loving. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Not because it did not affect me. Because it did. I knew if I kept it, I would study it for signs of the apology I wanted. I would turn her words over and over, looking for something clean inside them. There was nothing clean there, just blame in a softer dress. The donor fallout was quiet, but real. Marion Vale paused her pledge. 2 other donors asked for audited expense summaries. 1 board member resigned, citing governance concerns. Blair's title disappeared from the foundation website for a while, then returned smaller. Celeste stopped appearing in society page photographs for 3 months, which in her world was practically exile. I did not celebrate. I also did not intervene. That distinction mattered to me. The Halden room continued operating. Weddings, nonprofit breakfasts, a memorial service for a retired judge, a winter market with handmade ornaments and bad parking. Staff stayed. Tessa kept working coat check on weekends. Reed promoted her to event assistant in January after she memorized the emergency layout faster than 2. Interns with hospitality degrees. One afternoon, I found the brass tag in the pocket of my cream wrap. 217, I had forgotten it was there. I stood in my little apartment above the florist, holding that tag while rain tapped against the window. For months, it had meant the coat room, the small table, the coats brushing my shoulder, Daniel sitting down. Then slowly, it meant something else. It meant Tessa's shaking hand giving me proof because she knew wrong when she saw it. It meant Sloan bringing me food. It meant Reed saying the word that changed the room because the paperwork was true, whether Celeste liked it or not. It meant I had walked out with my own coat, my own name, and my own keys. In February, we hosted a small fundraiser at the Halden Room for a public school arts program, unaffiliated with the Wexlers. Nothing grand, no burgundy silk, no donor wall, just teachers, parents, folding displays of student work, and Sloane's mini pot pies because she said rich people had ruined canapes and children deserved better. Tessa managed the front table. Reed supervised from the side wall, pretending not to be proud. Mrs. Alvarez donated flowers from the shop downstairs, small jars of white tulips and greenery on each table. I wore the same green dress, not to reclaim it, I just liked the dress. Near the end of the night, a little boy with paint on his sleeve asked if I owned the whole building. I smiled and said, I help take care of it. His teacher said, she does more than that. I looked around the ballroom. No one had assigned me a place that night. I moved where I was needed. At the end, Sloane packed leftovers into a paper bag and pushed it into my hands. You still forget to eat, she said. I ate. 3 bites during setup does not count. Tessa walked over, holding a small envelope. We found something in the coatroom drawer, she said. Inside was another brass tag. Newer than mine, shinier, unstamped. We thought you should have a clean one, she said, for the office key ring. I looked at both of them. Sloane shrugged. Don't make it weird, that made me laugh, a real laugh. The kind that comes out before you ask whether you are allowed to have it. I put the clean tag on my key ring. I kept 217 in the drawer of my desk. Daniel and I did not have a dramatic final scene. Real endings are often paperwork and quiet rooms. We separated. We sold the house. He moved into a condo near his office. He started therapy according to one email he sent me, and I hope that helped him. I do not say that bitterly, I loved him. Part of me probably always will. But love without protection had taught me to stand in the cold and call it patience. Celeste sent one handwritten note after the separation papers were filed. Mara, I hope one day you understand that families are complicated. Celeste, no apology, no signature with love, just her name as if it were still a seal. I placed it in a folder labeled Wexler Correspondence and did not answer. Uncle Warren called once. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. I should have said something years ago. I'm sorry. I kept that one for a week before deleting it. Not because I hated him. Because an apology from a silent witness is still not shelter after the rain has passed. Blair never apologized. She did unfollow me, then follow me again from what was clearly a private account, with no profile picture. Tessa found it first and showed me during a staff lunch. Should I block it? She asked. I looked at the screen. No, I said. Let her see the building doing fine. That may have been petty. I allowed myself that much. The last time I saw Celeste was almost a year after the gala, at a city permit hearing for a different property. She was in the hallway outside Chamber 3 speaking to a council aide. She looked older but not broken. People like Celeste rarely break in public. They recalibrate. She saw me and went still. For a second, I thought she might walk away. Instead, she came toward me. Mara, she said. Her eyes moved over my navy blazer, my file folder, my badge for the hearing. I hear the Halden room is doing well. It is. A pause. Daniel misses you. I held the folder against my side. I hope he's well. She looked irritated by the clean edge of that answer. We were not perfect, she said. No. But you could have handled that night differently. There it was again, the old invitation. Step into the room where my reaction stands trial and her behavior sits quietly in the back. I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, so could you? I walked into Chamber 3 before she answered. The hearing took 22 minutes. The permit passed. Outside, the hallway was empty. I drove back to my office with the windows cracked even though it was cold. That night, I opened my desk drawer and took out the brass tag. 217 was darker now, worn at the edges from my thumb. I thought about the woman I had been at that little table, sitting beside Coates, while people decided whether my humiliation was polite enough to ignore. I wanted to reach back and put a hand on her shoulder, not to tell her she was powerful. She did not need to feel powerful yet. Just to tell her that she was not imagining it. That would have been enough. That's my story. A brass coat check tag, a chair beside 200 coats, and a key ring that finally held only doors I chose to open. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to notice where they seat you when they think you have no power. You do not have to scream to leave. You do not have to convince everyone to understand. Sometimes the quietest freedom is taking your coat, keeping your proof, and walking out through the front door. If this story reminded you of a place you've outgrown, leave a comment for the person who is still sitting there, wondering if it really happened the way they think it did. It did. and they deserve a better seat.